What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we got Alan Robert, author of Beauty of Horror, as well as bassist of Life of Agony, on the phone. Thank you so much for your time today, man. Great to have you here.
It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. You've been on like a never-ending creative streak lately, which is something I've really been admiring. Excellent work. So the Beauty of Horror is right now like the latest graphic novel and everything that's out right now. What I'm curious is when you go into writing with your comic books or with your graphic novels or coloring books, do you always start off with a preconceived idea, or is there kind of like a lot of trial and error with the creative process for you?
I think every project starts differently for me, whether it's a concept or a design or a title. And, you know, I've been doing this for about 10 years with IDW Publishing. And, you know, we were talking before we jumped on a little bit about School Visual Arts. But when I was in School Visual Arts, I had an idea for a comic series called Wire Hangers, and it wasn't until 2009 where I pitched it to IDW and they picked it up, and I've been with them ever since. But that's where that originated from, all the way back in school. And then since then, it's just kind of like, okay, I've got my foot in the door with a publishing company. What else can I come up with? And thankfully, these stories keep coming to me, and they've been really supportive over the last 10 years.
Is there maybe like some research that goes involved into it, or does maybe like just sometimes ideas strike at like, you know, when you least expect it?
Always in the shower. The shower is the creative space when you're not thinking about anything and ideas just pop into your head.
Well, I've interviewed a lot of musicians who say, like, thank God we have phones now where we can record any idea. So how do you record any of the ideas in the shower?
Very wet. No, you know, yeah, and also, you know, while you're sleeping, sometimes the subconscious, you know, cues you with some hints of ideas, and, you know, sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and write down an idea or jot a note in my phone just so I won't forget it.
Do you feel that because, you know, with your graphic novels and your comic books, maybe because, you know, there is like a story and a narrative that you're conveying through it, is it maybe a little less open to interpretation than maybe like the songs that you've written with Life of Agony or so on?
Well, it's interesting because with the coloring book stuff, with the Beauty of Horror, you know, I'm just drawing the line work, and it's really up to the colorists to make it their own and put their own creativity to it. So that is completely up to their own creative interpretation of what color palette, where the lighting is coming from, or the tone, or the, you know, is it a happy scene or a scary scene? And you'd be so surprised you get, you know, 10 different colorists working on the same page, and you'll have 10 completely different results.
And has maybe seeing the results of how other people interpreted your line work, does that maybe open up new ideas for the future in the creative process?
It absolutely helped me, because when I put the first Beauty of Horror book out, I never intended for it to be what it's become, this hit best-selling series, and I'm working on the 7th book now, and, you know, just to see what people have done with the pages, with their color work, has definitely influenced how I go about drawing them. And drawing that first Beauty of Horror coloring book was kind of a challenge, because I had to change my whole approach from the graphic novels that I was working on before, because when you work on a graphic novel, at least for someone like me, I'm doing all the penciling, inking, coloring, lettering, and there's a lot involved to create depth and atmosphere, whether it's lighting effects or certain shadow techniques. And when you're drawing a coloring book, it's just one line weight, one single line, no shading, no big heavy ink blocks to create depth in a scene. So it really relies on the composition and certain inking techniques to convey, the type of design that you want people to color.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to rethink how I was going to illustrate when I took it on, and it was a challenge. And over several books, you find your groove and your own style with it.
Mm-hmm. You were a cartooning major at SVA too, right?
Yep, I was. I studied under Walt Simonson, the famous artist from the Mighty Thor from Marvel.
Oh wow!
And what a talented guy. And it was a cool experience because he would always bring his friends from Marvel and other comic book artists in to speak to us. So it was kind of like a mini comic book convention every time we had a class.
Yeah, it just seems like always the greatest alumni from SVA started in cartooning. You, Gerard Way from My Chemical Romance,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be a musician, don't go to music school, don't go to Berkeley, go to SVA and study cartooning. It'll work out, I promise. Yeah, and so many people went to SVA just because of My Chemical Romance too. But
it was cool too because Walt Simonson put out kind of, I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but they have these giant artist editions through IDW, and they scan the original comic book art and publish them at actual size instead of the reduced, floppy comic book size. And they released these really beautiful hardcover books, and they did that with Walt. And I ran into him at New York Comic Con, and we caught up. It was many years since I went to school of visual arts, and after talking for a bit, he ended up writing the foreword for my Crawl to Me graphic novel.
Oh wow!
Which was a huge honor for me.
Yeah, that's got to be awesome. There's so many great teachers there. And being that you were a cartooning major, because I had a lot of friends in that major, and it had very, very rigid line work. Like you need to be perfect. There's really no room for messing up. I was a fine arts major, so mistakes were a necessity. But I'd imagine you have to be very, very focused when designing these novels and everything like that, right? There's really I guess no such thing as happy accidents or something like that.
Well, to be honest with you, when I went to school, I had a really hard time taking a script and adapting it into comic pages. It was, it's one thing to draw these action-packed splash pages or covers, but to take a script and to adapt it and try and get what the writer wants to achieve through visual sequential art is a real tough thing, and especially at that age, I had a lot to learn, and I definitely learned more on my own, creating my own stories. A lot of times, I wouldn't even write a script. I would write an outline of how I wanted each issue to flow, and I would create thumbnail sketches of each of the pivotal moments, and then each page I would tackle separately and actually work in the dialogue after I did the art. So I had my own way of working, but when you're working with teams, for big comic book companies, if you have a designated role, whether you're a penciler or an inker, or that's when the real challenge is, working with other people and trying to figure out how they want the story to go. I have the whole thing living in my head, so it's a little easier, but it would be a lot more confusing for someone to just jump in and try and help me with it.
Yeah, and I'd imagine if you revolve your ideas too much around a preconceived notion or think about it too much, you're going to end up disappointed with the end results regardless, right?
Yeah, and when I first was going to release Wire Hangers in 2009, I had a couple of comic book artists that agreed to draw it for me. I was just going to write it, and when their schedules got so chaotic and just many months were passing by, I said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to draw it myself and see what happens, and that's when I got the publishing deal. So as critical as I am of my own style and my own work, ultimately that's what got the deal. So I was grateful for that.
Do you feel that maybe the characters that are portrayed, whether they are in wire hangers or the designs in The Beauty of Horror or anything like that, are they almost like maybe representations or external metaphors of who you personally are? Is there any personal experiences or personal elements in your life invested into this, or do you almost kind of use art, a visual art, as a method of escaping yourself in a way?
It's kind of both. I mean, there's so many hours put into sitting there and drawing that it's unavoidable to put yourself and your likes and personality into the art. And especially with the latest Beauty of Horror book, Beauty of Horror 4 Creature Feature, it revolves around the characters creating or recreating famous horror scenes from the horror movies that I grew up with. So that was a lot of fun for me because a lot of my favorite horror movies are kind of under the radar or not as popular as some others. So I got to sneak some, American Werewolf in London in there, and They Live, and a bunch of others that are kind of just like maybe not so mainstream.
Yeah, definitely. And does it influence on how you approach music too? Because I remember, like, when you released The Sound of Scars last year with Life of Agony, I was very intrigued by like Prelude and the tracks like Then, like those like interlude tracks that I thought really enhanced the narrative of the album. Do you maybe kind of like have a similar approach into music as you do with visual art in a way?
Well, those, in particular, we were with The Sounds of Scars, we were continuing the narrative from River Runs Red from 1993. So we had a jumping off point, and we knew where we wanted to take the story. So to create those little audio scenes, I actually wrote out a script and worked on it with Joey. And Joey, he made those scenes come to life. He got a bunch of friends. Actually, they're all friends and family that acted on those, and he created those audio scenes from the script. Working with people that we knew and that we were friends with that wanted to be involved. And it was just amazing to see it come to life and to have that authenticity with all the radio chatter through the EMS workers. And, we did a lot of research with friends of ours on the police force and in emergency units to get all the codes right. We put a lot of time and energy into that.
Yeah, it's really funny that you because I thought that this album was almost kind of like tying up the loose ends, or maybe like bringing closure to the chapter of River Runs Red, because people still talk about River Runs Red like it was released yesterday, and in the hardcore scene. So I did consider The Sound of Scars to be more of a follow up to River Runs Red than a place where there's no more pain. So that's really interesting that you said that. You answered my question.
I beat you to it.
Yep, exactly. I love it when that happens. It makes room for all the other questions I wanted to ask. And do you feel like, and we talked about it when we spoke at Bowery Ballroom, because you mentioned like there's a lot of isolation. Do you is there maybe a similar energy that you channel into music as you do with visual art, or do you feel that because, Life of Agony is a very collaborative process between, you and Mina and Joey and everybody, or do you feel that like maybe that there's something similar that ties it together?
With the art and the music?
Yeah.
Well, the art is kind of like lock myself away and see what comes out. It really is an isolating process, and going through this pandemic since March has really allowed me to explore even more avenues because I didn't have the schedule of touring, starting an art project and then leaving it for a couple of weeks and then coming back to it. I really was uninterrupted during the pandemic, and I got a lot of artwork done. Not only was there the part 4 of the Beauty of Horror series, but I worked on this haunted journal, Beauty of Horror Haunt This Journal, and it's basically like 200 pages filled with spooky prompts to get you creative. It's for horror fans to kind of lose themselves and try things out. It's kind of geared towards maybe a younger audience. Like when we were growing up, we had Ouija boards and tarot cards to play around with and things like that. And so it's that type of mentality that there's a bunch of spooky activities in this book to really kind of find your creativity in that space.
I've always said that as a result of all this isolation and this anxiety and this confusion happening with the world today, that I think we're going to enter the greatest era of art since the Renaissance, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we really have no choice. We gotta keep it safe and find things that keep you going and keep you positive to get through it. And thankfully, this is kind of just another day in the life of what I do. So, being locked down is kind of normal for me in a way, besides the touring going away. But the other side of my life where I'm spending, 10, 12 hours a day drawing, this was actually, almost a blessing in disguise because I got to really focus on some things that have kind of been on the back burner. But it's really saved me in a lot of ways through the pandemic because it gave me a purpose and a goal, and it kept my creative juices flowing, and it kept me positive when there's so much negativity out there.
Yeah, and I've always said you got to use like the negativity as your armor, not your anchor, and I feel like you do that with your art and your music all the time.
Well, I try to. It's hard sometimes, when you're dealing with, life's chaos and the state of the world at the moment, to try and stay upbeat and positive and constantly searching for that light at the end of the tunnel, and the tunnel just gets longer. So you got to do the best you can, and this is just my way of coping in a way. So, and it's good to see also that, especially with the coloring books and the journal, there's such interactive pieces of art that I constantly see every day people posting colored pages from the books and getting to experience, unplugging for a minute and focus on art in their lives too. And so I think it's helping a lot of people. They consider coloring art therapy, and I do think it helps.
Definitely. I feel like also because people really relate to you, whether it is through your music or through your art, that I feel like, people can't go to shows, they can't see their favorite musicians, play on stage or, meet them or whatever. So I feel like this is allowing you to connect with your very, very dedicated fans as well.
Yeah, it's been really cool in that way. And, I've seen a lot of, streaming shows, pandemic shows where, bands throw a camera in their space and play shows for fans. And while I enjoy all that, we haven't done that. And, we've been all separate in our separate homes all this time. And, it's so much different without the fans being there and creating an atmosphere of live music, Yeah. There's something missing for me. And I give credit to people and other bands that have made the best of it and have gone out there and done it, the streaming concerts and stuff. But we haven't done that because we haven't felt that it's just not the right thing to do for us at the moment. And maybe we'll get there one day. But I just think, for me personally, it's a little hard to wrap my head around that whole thing, because the live show for me has so much to do with the audience energy.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe if there's a different way to do it in the streaming world, to have it more interactive, maybe that might be a way to go, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Well, if you do a live stream performance, I'll watch it, but I'll need to hire somebody to like push me down in my own living room because it won't be the same. And I'm not even like saying that to be funny. Like I think there is no show like a Life of Agony show. The way that you guys all like exert your energy on stage and like the way that you bring the crowd into it. When I go to a Life of Agony show, it feels like I'm at actually like I don't consider there to be any strangers at a Life of Agony show. It's just friends that I haven't made yet, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's so hard to recreate that virtually, you know. We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, if you do it, though, are you guys going to be responsible for any chairs that or like furniture that gets broken?
See, that would be funny if you could film, you know, fans in their living rooms like jumping off their couches and stuff.
Oh.
Now, that might be something there.
That the plot will thicken. Maybe you can like do like a giant like Zoom chat with like 40 people in the same chat.
Yeah.
And whoever breaks the most shit gets free merch.
Yeah.
And I have two more questions for you. That's cool. But when it comes to like going back to the creating process, because clearly like I was very impressed, like, you know, with looking at the beauty of horror and like, you know, examining like, you know, wire hangers and all that. Like, you know, it takes a lot of time to create it. Obviously, you have to be very precise with what you do. Do you find it maybe like it kind of like that creative energy to keep it lasting? Do you have a hard time like working on things for a long period of time? Because I'd imagine that like either the creative energy drains or like you don't feel emotionally attached to it the same way when you started it, right?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, the coloring books are they're over 80 pages each. So the first book that I did in the Beauty of Horror series, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. It was kind of, it started out as a joke, first of all. I came home from a rehearsal with the band, and my wife and my daughter were coloring in one of these beautiful nature coloring books, and I wanted to join in and you know, just spend some time with them doing that. But I couldn't connect with any of the pictures, you know. It was like everything was too beautiful, too perfect. And my wife said, well, what would you want to color? I said, probably something scary or disgusting. And the most disgusting thing I could think of at that moment was CBGB's bathroom. Yeah, you've been to CB's before. And
I haven't. I was 13 when they closed, sadly.
Well, I'm sure you could Google a picture of it.
I have.
The most disgusting bathroom you could think of. There's no stalls it's just one giant room of, you know, stickers and pus and DNA. And so I drew that up as a coloring page, and I posted it up on social media, and it was April Fool's Day. And I was like, here's my version of adult coloring. And people started coloring it, you know, and it was a lot of fun to see what people did to that black and white bathroom. And that really, you know, it hit me. It was like, this is so cool to be interactive with people in this creative space. And I said, well, if I was going to do a coloring book, I can't draw 80 pages worth of bathrooms, so what am I going to do? And I kept to my wheelhouse, which was horror, and I pitched this horror adult coloring book to IDW, and they said yes in like 10 minutes. It was April Fool's Day, so I wasn't sure if they were serious. I thought they were maybe messing with me because that was like the quickest green light I got out of all my projects. But they were serious. They wanted to do something in the coloring book space, and this was different. There was really no popular horror coloring books out at the time. And so I really just focused all my energy into making the ultimate coloring book for horror fans, you know, everything from vampires and werewolves to zombies and mummies and witches and everything you could think of. So I made my list of things that I wanted to draw, and about halfway through the book I came up with this Guliana character, this kind of undead girl, and she became the mascot for the series. but it didn't even start with her, and she's like kind of the face of the books now.
Wow.
So you never know where these things go. But once I finished that first book, it was kind of a relief because I didn't think I was going to get through 80 pages of this stuff, and here I am on my 7th book. But each one I created a theme for, so at least I had some inspiration, and it just wasn't this random, bunch of pictures put together. Each Beauty of Horror book has its own theme. So, like, book 2 was kind of inside Guliana's Creepatorium, which was like her museum of oddities, and then book 3 was Haunted Playgrounds, and that was all clowns and carnival theme, and book 4 was kind of an homage to horror movies. So it's been fun to keep it different like that.
It's amazing how things always start off as a joke before it becomes like to this day, like Sweet Child O' Mine, which, the most famous rock song of all time, I think, is like that opening riff started off as Slash like being drunk messing around at Guitar Center. So
of course it was.
yeah, so it's amazing that it works out that way. And like, at what point, how do you know when, like, and this could go for either music or for art, how do you know when it's like done though?
When it's done. Is anything ever done until you hand it in?
Yeah, true enough.
For me, it was all about scheduling because I was balancing doing the art and also writing a record and touring and all that stuff, and just managing daily life, being a dad. So it's really just trying to find as much time as you can to do what you want, and that's what determines when you're done. You run out of time. That's the only good side about being locked down for all these months is we had plenty of time to figure out a lot of these things, and it was cool drawing without that pressure of I have to finish this in 3 weeks because I'm going to Europe, or it's like I really got to focus and get all the details right, and I'm always my worst critic, so this time around with book 4, I really got to put that extra time into it.
Which is awesome. Again, one of the positives that come from this. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, and I haven't asked any artists this through the course of the pandemic, but I wanted to ask you this in particular because, coming from like the New York City hardcore scene, being involved heavily in the art world here, like, right now New York has really gotten hit hard by this with all, of these shutdowns and stuff. People can't go to shows or whatever. And, you would hear like bullshit articles, like somebody wrote that New York is dead forever or something like that. But I need some reassurance. Like, I think it's fair to say New York will prevail through all this bullshit, right?
I think once we figure out this COVID thing, it's going to be, live music is going to be bigger and better than ever because people finally got to see what they missed all this time. And, I think a lot of shows have come and gone where, even myself included, bands come through and you're like, I'll catch them next time, what if there's not a next time? Now we know what that feels like. And I think when your favorite bands come through, I think people will be more inclined to go out and see live music again. I think it's going to be more intense and more smiles in the audience because people have missed it for so long.
I almost consider this in a way like karma because like like people would say that New York's culture was dying because there was no more CBGBs or there was no more L'Amours, but like they wouldn't appreciate the other clubs that were already open before this pandemic happened. So like I feel like now is like what were you saying before, that New York was dead back then? How about now this year's like bitch please?
Well, we all got spoiled, right? We took things for granted, and now this was a huge wake-up call for everybody, not just for the music scene, but just for life, to enjoy what's right in front of you and not take it for granted, and, really experience the present, really make an effort to try and experience every moment now, because you don't know what's going to be tomorrow.
Yeah. before, like, I was hearing people like stress enough, being like, it's okay to take a day for yourself. It's okay to, stay home once in a while if you need a break. But now, like, I think when all this is over, it's be like, all right, get the fuck out of your house. Yeah.
And I think people can't wait to do that again.
Oh yeah.
I know I can't.
Oh yeah. I'm already bracing myself for the biggest mosh pit when the shows are back full force. Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Always great to talk to you, Alan. Glad that you and everybody are doing okay. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote, with the Beauty of Horror, or with Life of Agony, or anything else going on?
Well, Beauty of Horror just released, like I said, Beauty of Horror 4 creature feature, and also Beauty of Horror Haunt This Journal. And last year we were running a Kickstarter that got funded for Beauty of Horror tarot cards, where you could color in your own tarot card set, or they come fully colored by my buddy Jay Photos, who did Lock and Key. And those will be coming out. The Kickstarter got funded, and those are at the printers now. And I think they'll start to ship in the beginning of the new year. And soon after, they'll be available worldwide, all the decks. There's actually 3 different decks. Color your own, the color deck, and then draw your own. So it's kind of like blank cards that you could draw your own tarot cards, which is kind of fun.
Oh, wow. I definitely can't wait to check that out. And you got to try to, maybe in the future for like a graduation anniversary, you and Gerard Way need to collaborate on a comic book together. 2 SVA alumni, 2 great bands, East Coast OGs. We got to make that happen.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Alan. Everybody, Alan Robert of Life of Agony, author of The Beauty of Horror. Be sure to check out everything under the sun. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.